This episode is brought to you by the Painted Lady Tattoo Studio in Jacksonville, Illinois. The Painted Lady is a female-owned two-artist studio offering a range of tattoo styles with a focus on custom, thoughtful work that reflects each client's individual story. Beyond tattoos, the Painted Lady is also a creative space and growing curated shop, featuring handcrafts, yarn, art supplies, and a constantly expanding selection of materials and goods for makers and artists. Whether you're coming in for a tattoo or just stepping inside the lobby, the goal is the same: to create a space that feels inspiring, intentional, and rooted in creativity. You can find the Painted Lady on Facebook to explore the artist's work, current offerings, and appointment availability. Welcome to the Pokes and Pearls podcast. I'm your host, Lindsay, coming to you from West Central Illinois, where I live with my family, our 3 cats, and our dog. I'm a knitter, crocheter, painter, and occasional sewist. Professionally, I'm a tattoo artist and co-owner of a studio that also carries yarn, craft supplies, and a growing collection of things that we find inspiring. This podcast is a space for creativity, process, and the lives of artists and makers, sometimes just between me and you, and sometimes with guests. So grab a cup of something, settle in with your project, and I hope that you enjoy the episode. Welcome back to the Pokes and Pearls podcast. Today's topics for the episode include on the needles, under the needles, shiny object syndrome, loose threads, and behind the counter. We'll also finish off the episode like last time with an oracle reading, but I will give you a heads up ahead of time if oracle readings are not your thing. This segment is called On the Needles, where I'll discuss my works in progress for knitting, crochet, sewing, and any other crafts I'm up to at the moment. So just like last time, I've been working on bandanas, and I actually published my bandana pattern that is kind of my go-to. It's like an adaptation of the bandana pattern that I learned how to crochet bandanas from, which I linked under my previous episode. And then I will also link my pattern from my Ravelry store under this episode as well. It's called the Honey Road Bandana. And I tried to go very like 70s vibe with it. And I just released that a few days ago. So that was really exciting. It's my first crochet pattern. So be gentle with me. I think it's okay. It's so easy. I really don't see how I could have messed up writing it down, but you know, there's always room for error with anything that we do. We are human. I have also been making mittens again. Aurora found a pattern, which is published and is not mine, but it was themed after tattoos. So it was a swallow and an anchor, but it used a size 00 needles. I'll also link that below if you want to support that maker and go and see their pattern. I am also making a version of a tattoo mitten pattern, I guess. It looks really different. It just has the same theme and everything, which actually we'll be talking about in loose threads today. Not actually because of this mitten, but it just happened to be that these two subjects, or this subject like overlaps into 2 sections, because I recorded loose threads because it's a very long loose threads last week sometime. Then I happened to also be designing again. So it all kind of came together last minute, didn't it? But anyway, the first pattern that I'll be releasing at some point for these American traditional tattoo mittens is Hold Fast, which is a really classic like knuckle tattoo for sailors back in the day and now. And usually it features a swallow, which is a very popular sailor tattoo, and of course an anchor, another very popular sailor tattoo. So those are drafted. I knitted the first one and it looks great. It worked out great. I did the corrections and everything it needed. And I also did cheater like fingers. I've never done that before, but it was really easy. I hate knitting individual fingers for gloves, but when I finished this pattern, it did not work with just like an open concept mitten where all 4 of your fingers were just one big hole in one big hole. So I I did not come up with this. I just had not seen it published necessarily, but I thought, what if I just sew along each column of the color work and create like cheater openings for each finger? And it worked, and it did hold the mitten in such a way that you can read the text on the knuckles. So that's awesome. That worked out really well. I'm super excited. So the first pattern will be hold fast, and the second pattern I think I'm going to do bite back, which will have a snake head and something else that goes along with it. I'm not sure yet. This pattern has a rope around the wrist for, sailors, boats, stuff like that. And bite back, I think I want to have a chain around the wrist or maybe even a broken chain. So very, very classic tattoos. I don't know when this is going to come out. I'll kind of tease you guys a little bit with it, but I need to actually knit both of them first, and I can't decide if I want to release them together or like one pattern, or if I want to release them separately, like each pattern individually. I don't know. I haven't decided. It's been a long time since I've released mitten patterns, so just taking my time. For now, I'm just making them for me and Aurora and other tattoo artist friends that we would like to gift these to. Maybe I'll make kits for the yarn part of the tattoo shop. I don't know. I haven't decided. I'm not really focusing super hard on that, but it is fun to be designing again. And speaking of designing, I actually also have several drafts of patterns from way before I closed my Etsy shop in 2024. I was really getting back into designing. And then, of course, life changes happened and I stopped all that. So I still have all those drafts and they're really cute. There's lots of mittens. I do have some thick like sweater socks that I make a lot. I've made them for gifts and they're everyone's favorite socks to receive. And those are super easy. So I was just going to write that up, make it look cute, release that. And I'm also currently very, very close to publishing my daughter's favorite sock pattern I make her. It's based very loosely on how there was a pattern. I don't even know how many years ago it was. It was called the Jelly Roll socks. And for a while, it was discontinued. And about the time that I became interested in this style of sock was when it was discontinued. I do think it's back up on Ravelry now. There is a pattern called the Jelly Roll socks that is the one I'm thinking of. And then there's also a Jelly Roll socks pattern that's by Knit Picks. I don't know if it was kind of the same situation where the first Jelly Roll socks was discontinued, so Knit Picks picked up the name maybe to kind of piggyback on the popularity. I'm not really sure. I have not knit the original Jelly Roll socks. The only reason I know anything about the way they're constructed is because Molly from A Homespun House was talking about them on her podcast, and she discussed briefly that the way that the cuff is done with the rolls, it involves some sewing, and I will avoid sewing at all costs. So while this sock pattern does mimic the way that the Jelly Roll socks look, not the Knit Picks one, the original one, it's not constructed the same way at all. So they are called the Bubblegum Blitz socks. My daughter picked the name, and they'll be released sometime in the next few weeks. They're really fun, super bright colors. And as of 2026, I do not hire tech editors or testers for my patterns due to time constraints and money. I used to do that. It was really expensive. It was really stressful, and it took all the joy out of designing for me. I am by no means a professional designer. This is something I just share after I've knit a certain pattern of mine several times. People seem to like my designs. So if it is important to you that a designer does tech editing and testing beyond what me and maybe my friends knit with my patterns, then that's completely understandable. And there are plenty of designers out there that will fit those standards. I just am not going to be doing that anymore. And then what else have I been making? I have gotten into candy lizards. I have mentioned this, I know, on my tattoo page, maybe not on my knitting page. I don't know for sure. But you remember like the 90s beaded lizards? So I never learned to make those, which is really weird. I was talking to my mom about this just the other day, actually, that we did crafts all the time. I remember making perler beads. There were these bowls that I don't remember how they were made and she doesn't either, but you melted them over a mold in the oven and it created this like wavy plastic bowl. And those were really cool. We did woven cot pads and stuff. I know you guys remember those because I feel like we did them in school and we also did them at home, but we did so many different crafts, but we never did beaded pets. I remember my classmates having them. In fact, whenever I posted about these, one of my classmates who is on friends with me on Facebook, she was like, "Did you not make these in school when all of us were?" And I was like, "No, I didn't." So my mom's like, "I don't know. I guess I just didn't think that you guys wanted to, or it just wasn't something that we got around to." So anyway, this is not to say there was no shortage of crafts in my house growing up, but for some reason we never did the popular beaded pets. And now I know how to make them. And it was super, super easy. I have been making the candy lizards nonstop since I learned. I just bought a ton of new beads, which I'll just talk about that a little bit in shiny object syndrome. I've been having a really difficult April and May, which I don't know if I've talked about this before. I probably have. I know I mentioned it in the first introduction episode, but since I had my daughter, and this is by no means holding my daughter or her existence responsible, she changed my life completely. She made me braver. There's absolutely no regret there. But when she was born, there were a lot of things in my life that having a daughter made me change to protect her and to protect myself and our future. And I also developed postpartum psychosis, PTSD, all of that. So this time of year around her birth, I usually have a pretty rough time, and I'm definitely feeling it right now. It reaches its peak shortly after her birthday. It has gotten shorter every year, the length and the intensity, even though in the moment it doesn't really feel like it. I know that it's getting better. I also want to apologize if you can hear some loud crunching in the background. Stevie's food bowl is right behind my desk and she is going to town. She is apparently starving. So if you hear some crackles in the background, it is her eating. My mic should cut out most of it, but I just wanted to do a little insert there with that. Anyway, so I have definitely been having a really difficult week, especially this past week. I would say since I last recorded, it all just came crashing down. And what I ended up doing was, after I learned to do the beaded lizards, I've just incorporated that into my daily routine. I've taken some time off work to be home and just kind of get through the worst of it. And I wake up, I make a couple beaded lizards. I kind of hem-haw around, maybe go back to bed, maybe eat something, wake up, shower, make a couple more lizards. So there are a lot of lizards in my house and in the tattoo shop right now. And it is so addicting. I really, really enjoy making them and plan to continue making them even after my mental health improves and the PTSD symptoms and stuff go away. So that's the lizards. I did try out one of the plushie patterns that I bought and spoke about in the last episode. I tried to make the silly goose. The pattern is wonderfully written. However, I have told you I'm not very good at following patterns. So I messed up a lot. His butt is crooked. One of his feet is messed up. His eyes are crooked. His wings are on crooked. I will share a picture of him on my Instagram. He is sitting on the shelf over my desk, and that's where he's going to stay. He will not be sold. So I'm kind of considering making him the desk bird that will sit next to all of the clipboards that people fill out their information for getting a tattoo in. But yeah, so that's the only one that I've done. I did also start and get the body done of a slap bracelet snake. I'm making this one for Will because I feel like every time I make something, it's usually for Rory, because Rory loves all handmade things. She wants all of the mittens, all of the socks, all of the plushies, all of the scrunchies. And Will does not like hand knit socks. He does not like wool of any kind. He's not a huge fan of not scrunchies, obviously scrunchies, but he's not a huge fan of plushies anymore. He just plays games. But he does like interactive things like fidgets and stuff like that. So, and he really likes the beaded pets. So I keep giving him all the beaded pets I can to like make up for all of the things that I make for Rory and not for him, even though he doesn't care at all. I was talking about the lizards, but I also made beaded pizza and a beaded ice cream and a beaded, what's the other? Oh, frog. I made a beaded frog to give him. I didn't like how those turned out. I don't like when there are a lot of beads per row because I feel like it warps the design. Anyway, we're not talking about bead, we're talking about plushies. So the slap bracelet snake, I was hoping to get them done for the book fair tomorrow. That's not going to happen. I'll just take my time. I don't need to rush. And honestly, I'm also considering just not selling the slap bracelet snakes and making them for all my nieces and nephews because I think they'll love that, because my kids are very excited about these slap bracelet snakes, like having a little guy to wrap around your wrist. I also thought it might be cool to apply the slap bracelet snake idea to, like, I bought a chameleon pattern and also maybe a possum, because then you could have it wrapped with the tail around your wrist or around, I don't know, a belt loop or a purse loop or something. Like, wouldn't that be really cool? Just gonna play with that a little bit. I'm still working on the second baby sock very slowly. I've definitely lost steam on my baby socks, but we have time. Like, there's no rush for those. And not crochet or knitting, but I also have been sewing lately. I purchased, did I mention this in the last episode? I don't remember. It's called the Kato Drawstring Project Bag. I will link it below. It's from Etsy, but I can't remember the name of the maker right now. It's a very, very nice pattern. I apparently, as bad as I am at following patterns of crochet and sometimes knitting, I did a really good job following this sewing pattern. So I started out with just some fabric that I had. I'm very happy to report that I went through my fabric stash, what I had left from whenever I sewed for my Etsy shop, and I really didn't have a lot of usable fabric. It was a lot of scraps. So I got rid of the scraps, and with what I had left, I used that to make 2 bags from this pattern, and I spread it out over several days. I didn't force myself to go from start to finish, which I've done in the past, and I really burned myself out. And I just finished them not even an hour ago. They look really good. I did such a good job. There are a few things that aren't lined up, but I'm really not upset about that. And they have pockets on the inside. I have never put pockets inside a drawstring bag, or I'm sorry, it's a drawstring bag. I've never put pockets inside of a project bag, and all the project bags I've made in the past were just things I drafted myself because I was scared, again, to try a pattern. I really, really recommend this pattern. I'm going to link it below, and I'm also going to share pictures of the finished products of everything I mentioned on my Instagram, gothabilly.knit. So yeah, let's move on to the next segment. This segment is called Under the Needles, where I'll discuss some of my favorite tattoos and tattoo shop moments I've had recently. Tomorrow is the Spicy Book Fair. It's going to be a very, very busy day for me and for Aurora too. But for me specifically, I also took a 3 to 4 hour tattoo that I will be doing before the Spicy Book Fair. It is for the son of one of the coordinators of the fair itself. And it is also from my flash, and I can never resist doing a piece of my flash. So it is a focal piece, American Traditional Eagle. And then after that, around 2, we will start taking walk-ins for the book fair. And that always gets a little hectic. We don't currently have a desk girl. Usually one of my friends will be the desk girl, but her husband's work schedule doesn't line up for her to be able to be there. So I'm hoping Aurora has that covered with one of her friends, because it is going to be a mess if we don't have a desk girl. And we usually just give them free tattoos or something like that for helping us out. So that is going to be busy. I also have a very busy day on Saturday where I will be doing 5 little tattoos. So it's going to be like 2 flash days back to back is what it'll feel like. Other than that, though, I have not been in the shop much this week, and Aurora also hasn't been in the shop. She's been sick, and then I've been, the way I've been. I did have one client yesterday that has been my only one so far this week that I didn't end up rescheduling, and she ended up tapping out because it was a back piece, and back pieces are really, really tough. So she did great, and she always does a good job. And she is still the one that has sat longest for a back piece without tapping out. But this was over an old tattoo, and usually that's more sensitive, and the lower back is also very, very sensitive. So we're going to try numbing cream next time. We have a certain brand of numbing cream that we use, and I've never had a problem with it, with the healing. And it does seem to work, as long as, I don't know if you guys know this, but most of the time, numbing cream only works over adipose tissue, which is to say fat storage. So if you're using numbing cream for a tattoo or anything else over a bony area or a really like muscly area that doesn't have a lot of fat deposit, a lot of times the lidocaine will not last as long or even be effective at all. So something to think about if you've ever had a failure with numbing cream. It could have been because either you might be too thin of a person, or it might have been too thin of an area as far as like fat deposits go, at least with the lidocaine numbing cream we use. So just a fun fact. That is really all I have for Under the Needles, but I will be able to update you guys a lot more in the next episode because I'll let you know how the flash event went and all of that, because that's going to be crazy. It's always a lot of fun at the book fairs and also very, very, very busy. We will move on to the next segment. This podcast is a proud supporter of Imperial Yarn Co., an American wool company that prides itself on creating sustainable, American-made wool products that support wool farms right here in the United States. All the wool is specially milled without harsh chemicals or extreme temperatures, leaving it comfortable, soft, and pure. Imperial Yarn is 100% American-grown and American-made. We are so proud to be carrying Imperial Yarn Co. products at the Painted Lady in Jacksonville, Illinois. Their sustainable wool yarns are deliciously soft and hold up well to wear. I have personally knit mittens, hats, and cowls from these yarns, and they are buttery next to skin soft. I cannot recommend them more. Stop by the Painted Lady during operating hours to see our stock, and to carry your own inventory of Imperial Yarn Co., you can sign up to become a wholesaler of their products at imperialyarn.com. You can find Imperial Yarn Co. on Facebook as Imperial Yarn and on Instagram as @ImperialYarn. Sign up for their newsletter today to get access to new products, discounts, and wholesale deals. Thank you, Imperial Yarn, for allowing us to carry your product here at the Painted Lady. This segment is called Shiny Object Syndrome, where I share what has been inspiring me lately, whether that be new patterns, yarn, art, tattoo supplies, or anything else that has been capturing my attention. So I say again, pony beads and candy lizards have been quite the focus for me lately and have been helping me get through some mental health issues that I'm dealing with. And I bought some new pony beads and they are so pretty. I really, really like when I make these to pair opaque beads with like clear glittery beads, and I was running out of those because all I really had was what came with the bead pet kit that my mom got Rory for her birthday, which Rory hasn't been interested in, so I've just been using it. And then I just had a little stash of pony beads from another time that I wanted to learn to make these and didn't, and so it was just in the bottom of my craft stuff. And I'm working through those so fast, and I wasn't left with a lot of variety, and I had very, very few clear beads, and now I have enough to last me a very long time. So I'm so happy about those. I finished Verity by Colleen Hoover. I really hated it. And this is no hate to Brandy. Brandy, if you're listening, I love you, and I love you for having me borrow this book. I haven't actually seen her to give it back to her because she doesn't work Wednesdays, and that was the last time that I was in the shop to give it to her because she works just right down the hall from me. But yeah, I don't think I will be reading Colleen Hoover again. I think that she probably needs to find herself a fella, and maybe then she'll stop writing really shitty sex scenes to satisfy whatever she's trying to satisfy in her life. And that's really mean, but I'm sorry. She just made me so mad. I felt so insulted by the end. It was so predictable. And the plot holes, this book, the thing that was supposed to like absolve, spoilers if you haven't read it, so skip ahead. I don't know how far ahead. I skip ahead a bit and make sure I'm not talking about it anymore if you don't want spoilers. But the thing that was supposed to absolve Verity, the wife, is ridiculous. It's ridiculous because she still wrote this about her children. She still wrote this horrific manuscript about her children and then expected that to be like, no, wait, don't kill me. Don't whatever. Don't attempt to murder me, husband, because I didn't mean it. I just wrote about it. I also am a writer. I have not been an active writer for a long time, but I've written books before, never published, never will see the light of day. I did win writing contests, whatever. I'm trying to validate my own opinion here. Okay. Not that I need to, it's my podcast. I guess I can talk about whatever I want, but I still don't want to I don't want to get too passionate here, but I think I've already failed at that. Her writing is colorless. Her imagination is not there. The cleverness is not there. It made me really mad. And so I actually, because I wanted to be able to tell Brandy thank you, and I wanted to be able to give her the book back as soon as possible. So the other night, I've been having a lot of insomnia lately. Last night was actually the first night that I fell asleep before 1 a.m. in over a week. And so I literally skimmed. I probably skipped 20 pages at a time and still felt like I missed absolutely nothing in this. Still knew exactly what was going to happen. I know that I've already mentioned I have a really bad habit of that. I have a really bad habit of being able to see where the author's going and then getting frustrated and being like, well, I'm just done because you couldn't surprise me. Like, there's a little bit of an ego issue here, and I'm really sorry. I do apologize. But anyway, I didn't like it. I don't want to read any of her books again. I already knew I didn't like this author just because of all of the stuff that she has been involved in and media and stuff. That's a no from me. It's a 0 stars from me for Verity. But I have started The Price of Salt by Patricia Highsmith. It is a older book, which is kind of what I just keep going back to lately, is like pre-1980s books. That actually might not be. Hang on, let me see how old this book is. Yeah, I was right. The Price of Salt by Patricia Highsmith is a groundbreaking 1952 lesbian romance novel published under the pseudonym Claire Morgan. It's known for its realistic portrayal of a love affair between a young department store clerk, Therese Bellevit, and an older married woman, Carol Aird, and it offered a rare, hopeful ending for its time because, as we all know, any lesbian romance, it usually ends tragically and they don't end up together, and it was very frustrating. Patricia Highsmith, she did not claim her authorship over this book until 1991 because of how controversial it was to have a lesbian theme. Also, you may not recognize the name The Price of Salt because that's the original book's name, but you might recognize Carol, which was the adaptation in 2015 for the film. It had Kate Blanchett in it and not Margot Robbie, that's not right. Mara Rooney. So I haven't seen it. I'm not going to watch it until I've read the book. So I've started the book and so much better. So much better. Thank you so much, Patricia Highsmith, for redeeming my love of books. Also, I do want to say it's really not fair that I went into Verity right after reading what I read last, which was called The Bronze Horseman. It was, to give you an idea of how long this book was, it was 28 hours in audiobook form. It is also by, hang on, I'm so sorry. I think it's also by a Patricia. Oh, Paulina. It's by Paulina Simons. It's really good, but it was so long that it was like I just lived in it for so long. And it's a wartime book, very intricate love story. It's full of tragedy. It was a lot. So to go into something that is just so thin, there's just not much depth to it, wasn't really fair. So anyway, and then before that, I read Lady Chatterley's Lover. Highly recommend D.H. Lawrence and that book in particular, which was also a groundbreaking novel at the time. It was highly controversial because it was technically the first erotica novel, and boy is it. So, but a fantastic book. Okay, we're moving on from books. Sorry, I know that I went on about books for a long time just then. Shiny Object Syndrome. I am also on the hunt for mint sock yarn for Rory's request. She really wants mint socks in this pattern that I'm working on, the Bubblegum Blitz socks. She wants the next one to be mint. So I did find a few contenders on Etsy. If you guys have any recommendations for your favorite mint colored sock, I would love to hear them. And finally, I got some new fabric in to make these drawstring bags I was talking about. It is from the Apron Lady Shop Co. on Etsy. I'll link it down below. And it's tattoo fabric. It's so pretty. I also will share a picture of that on my Instagram. And I'm just obsessed. I cannot wait to start. But that is it for Shiny Object Syndrome. And prepare yourself because next is Loose Threads. Loose Threads is a segment where I discuss anything that is hanging around in my mind. It could be something historical I've found interesting, amusing, or reflection about something within the communities I'm a part of, hot takes, and life stuff. With Loose Threads, there aren't really any rules, so buckle in. This is a long one, guys. So just giving you a heads up, this one is a long Loose Threads, but it's something that I think is really important that almost everyone can relate to. So today's topic is about gatekeeping in creative communities. And I have what I consider an informational advantage on this topic just because I have been in several creative communities for a long time. And I have collected a lot of musings and information about the goings on within those communities. And I'm not saying I know even remotely as much as there is to know, and nuance isn't really my strength. But since this is my podcast and you're listening to me, I'm just going to share some of the things I've noticed within creative communities around this topic. So let's start with the community I have spent the most time in, the fiber community. My fiber community listeners were ready for this one, weren't you? Because you know our community is rampant with gatekeeping, copyright accusations, and various bouts of drama. We've made the news before. Protests and witch hunts and resistance hats and fundraisers for vulnerable communities have all shocked news anchors as they ruminated about the effectiveness of crafters and their rage against different issues. We really are such an intense and proud group to be a part of, and with any big personalities come big attitudes. For the most part, I wouldn't have it any other way, but it's absolutely been earned to call out this community for how intense it can get about its own various gatekeeping tendencies. My own experience with gatekeeping in the fiber community is actually one I have never talked about publicly. Some of my close yarn friends knew about this at the time and they helped me through it, but I was so terrified after it happened that I never spoke about it on my YouTube channel or with anyone I didn't trust completely. Even though I knew I hadn't done anything wrong, even though I learned about my rights as a creator, and even though I was a nobody in the designing world, it still shook me so thoroughly that I was sure if I ever brought it to light that I would experience what? I don't think I knew what the consequences would be, and that's because there wouldn't have been any. You know this, I know this, but I digress. My gatekeeping/copyright scare that kept me up at night was actually the first mitten pattern I ever released. At the time, mittens were viral within the fiber community. Everyone was knitting colorwork mittens, myself included. And as happens with trends, knitwear designers were capitalizing on the trend, and the inspiration hysteria was everywhere for them. I was knitting so many mitten patterns that I ended up taking a bit here and a bit there to find a mitten I liked best, a thumb placement and construction I found intuitive, and a yarn weight I wanted to work with for warmth and quick production. I settled on a design theme that inspired me, and my first mitten pattern was born. As I've mentioned, I had been knitting colorwork Christmas stockings for years. Designing a graph chart was second nature to me, and once I released the pattern, the hype blew me away. My pattern absolutely didn't go viral or anything, but it sold more copies than I ever could have imagined, far more than my Christmas stocking patterns ever did. The Cozy Cup of Mittens, my first of many mitten patterns, featured a steaming cup of coffee, maple leaves, and pumpkins on the front. I knit the main color in a marled rust-colored Patton's wool yarn that I had picked up on clearance, and the contrast color in an undyed Knit Picks worsted wool. I found an old chair on our porch, some pumpkins that we'd gotten from the pumpkin patch with the kids that season, and took pictures with my crappy Android. Within a week of the release, a very popular designer was in my inbox, and I was instantly nauseous as I read their message. They accused me of knowing why they were contacting me and launched into all the reasons they suspected I had copied their mitten pattern. They had recently also released a coffee-themed mitten in a different construction and yarn weight, but the concept was similar enough to warrant the accusation, they said. They knew I had used their patterns before. They knew I admired their work. And while they hadn't actually seen my pattern with their own eyes, they felt it was right to reach out to me since they make part of their living selling their designs. I was absolutely gutted. I drafted a million responses. I went over those responses with my husband, crying and gasping for air, worried about lawyers, and literally imagining police officers showing up at my door. I responded calmly. I told them about the differences between the patterns. I apologized. I offered to credit them for inspiration, which they didn't deserve, but again, I didn't know my rights at the time. Anyway, after reflecting with other makers and other designers and my friends, I was helped to realize how out of line that entire conversation had been. So I blocked them. What happened next I never expected. This designer went into their customer purchase emails through Ravelry and then reached out to my personal email with another catty follow-up. By this point, I was able to simplify my response and keep my emotions from making anything worse. I had read that before you can file against someone for harassment, you must let them know you don't want them to contact you anymore. So I said, quote, "You have used a personal email of mine that you only have because I was a previous customer of yours, which is against Ravelry TOS to use for any purpose other than to contact me about a pattern I purchased. Please do not contact me again under any circumstances," end quote. And they didn't, for the record. That was truly the end of that. Now, before any of you try really hard to rack your brains to figure out who this was and where it happened, let's not. It was a decade ago and we were all going through things. I have no idea what was happening in this person's life, and they didn't know anything about me. I realized that they are just a human, and despite the popularity within the knitting community, and however traumatizing that experience was for me, it doesn't make them a villain. It just made them uneducated about the rights of textile designers. And boy, was that quite the start. Let's talk about what I observed with gatekeeping in the polymer clay community. Immediately, no hesitation, glaze. Huge. Glaze for charms, and especially glaze for crochet hook handles. The finest, least tacky, most durable glaze made for the most seemingly successful sculptors. I can't stress enough how precious crochet hook makers were about the glaze they used for their hook handles. Within the crochet hook maker community, there would be little cliques, and if you got in, they would share their secrets about how they sealed their hook handles so that the glaze didn't wear off. Sometimes it was resin, and some of them had found this special resin varnish hybrid that held up to use. For my business, when I started to get into crochet hooks, I noticed a very particular pecking order that immediately went into action when I started posting. I would be reached out to in support or caution, or even made threats if my designs or themes or even shapes of my hooks resembled other makers too much. If I'm being honest, I would say the crochet hook community was one of the most intense gatekeepers I have run into in my small business ventures. Also within the polymer clay community, gatekeeping and copying accusations spread around constantly. I personally didn't deal with it too much, and even if I had after the first issue with the knitwear designer, I had learned what my rights were, so instead I tried to help other clay artists that I was friends with when they came to me with their frustrations in that area. I like to think I comforted them, or I hope I did. I know having someone tell you, calm down, this truly isn't a big deal, can sometimes make things worse, but I really didn't mean it condescending. It really isn't ever anything someone needs to worry about. You just keep creating and everything else will fall into place. And finally, let's talk about my most recent endeavor, gatekeeping in the tattoo community. If I thought the fiber community was intense and guarded, the tattoo community is another level. But at least with the tattoo community, I can see a very, very clear history that has set the tone of this for tattoo artists. Tattooing has been something that operated on the outskirts of society. Intriguing but feared, judged, sometimes illegal, but never, at least in my research, as respected as a mainstream career. Did you guys ever read Water for Elephants? I really loved that book, not so much the movie. We all know how those animals were treated, but the book was great. And anyway, one of the things that they talk about in the book is that joining the circus life is hard because it's such a closed community. There are the carnies and there's the normies, impermeable, and for so long, I think that's how the tattoo community operated, even up until extremely recently. Recently, meaning COVID. COVID altered the tattoo community as it had been known quite completely. In person, bodily fluids less than 6 feet from each other during a pandemic. For something that wasn't an essential job, tattoo artists had to adapt, and those that wanted to be tattooed did too. So, tattooing became visible in mainstream media as artists took to the internet to keep their businesses afloat during the pandemic. Likewise, as nearly everything was becoming available online, people could also purchase their own tattoo machines and try their hand in their boredom, their curiosity, and their convenience. I'm not going to get into it. I know how we all feel about ignorant tattoos and Amazon tattoo machines. Let's just save it for another time, okay? Anyway, because that's also kind of the point that I'm trying to make. While tattooing had to become more transparent to survive, removing that mystery also traded the idea that tattooing was too niche for anyone to do for, I could learn that. So the dam started to break and more people started to become tattoo artists. And the fierceness with which the trade was guarded ramped up. The abuse within the community became more and more exposed, and people started to say, "Fuck you and your gates. I'll do it myself, and I'll probably do it better." Coils versus rotary pens, stroke versus voltage, ink brands, stencil goo, glide, American traditional versus illustrative versus fine line. I could spend a week talking about what I've witnessed during my short time in the tattoo community and the fear I've seen from so many artists about their being judged by other tattoo artists. It makes sense though, doesn't it? This was a private community, sworn in blood and sweat and tears. You were strapped to the mercy of a mentor for as long as that mentor deemed worthy. And even then, there was a lot of studio versus studio turf wars. This happens now, present day, in towns as close as an hour from me. It's still a thing, COVID or not, and honestly, it can be a little scary. The thing with the tattoo community that the fiber community lacked, in my personal experience, is the brutality of humanity. When a system has operated outside of a societal umbrella for so long, with no legal standards to meet for the craft specifically, it gives way for people to abuse their power within the system. Mentors and studio owners could be greedy, have poor practices, and abuse their artists without any consequences from the real world. In my experience, entering the tattoo world was like, you're here now, you abide by these rules that can change any minute, and you obey those too. And damning logic or human decency, there is no one that's going to save you. Getting accused of copying a mitten pattern was honestly cake once I became a tattoo apprentice. Let me be clear though, as much of this stuff as I've seen more that makes me love tattooing and its art. This community, this craft has fought like hell to stay alive. It's scrappy and has taken beating after beating, rejection after rejection. It's been the secret friend that you don't say hi to in public but get tattoos from in all the places no one can see, and it has to keep its head up even though it isn't acknowledged as legitimate. It's fearless, and it's why I feel like I belong here more than I've ever belonged anywhere else. Whatever its reputation and whatever bad eggs there might be, the vast majority of the tattoo artists I've met are the socially awkward art kids with too many hobbies, a lot of anxiety, and no shortage of their own self-deprecation even as they make work people love. I've found my people, and they are people that make art for other people's bodies. So my conclusion is that in my research, what I've learned about gatekeeping and copyright is this: educate yourself on your rights as a creator. Content can be copywritten and protected by intellectual property laws. In terms of knitting and crochet, content includes specific wording of patterns line for line. That is it. You cannot copyright construction of garments or accessories. This is almost exactly the wording used for textile intellectual property laws. And you can't copyright context. Context in terms of pattern includes themes like coffee, pumpkin spice, reindeer, lacework patterns, where the thumb is placed on a mitten, how a head is shaped for an amigurumi. You just can't legally, which is why gatekeeping in creative communities is so rampant. It's literally the only power a creative has if they want to insist on dominance over a certain aspect of their work. Is it necessary, kind, or legal? Almost never. But if you're stern enough about things, most of the time people choose the path of least resistance and back down or post an apology to avoid cancel culture. But there is an even easier option. Acknowledge to yourself their lack of power, do not engage, and block them. I know, blocking, that will also get you publicly damned. And you know what? Fine. Do you know how many people there are in the world? I spent a decade observing cancel culture, and so much of that time I was also afraid of it. I will say though, as an observer for all those years, is that even the people that were come down on the hardest, called out the most, if they didn't deactivate their accounts and close their businesses, if they just kept going, even if they did originally engage with the people that were like coming at them, people moved on. So that designer I mentioned before, they've been blocked for a decade. The previous studio I worked at, owners were blocked from the moment we closed the door behind us. And you move forward. It's not always easy, but it is simple. So there you go. Gatekeeping. I would love to hear what your experiences have been with it. Let it go in the comments. Our final segment for today is called Behind the Counter, where I let you in on what's going on in our tattoo shop, The Painted Lady, and any events we have coming up. So I mentioned, obviously, we have the book fair tomorrow. I'm not going to talk about it again. It's just always a big deal to us. We get to meet a lot of people. Usually we end up with a couple new clients, and everyone has a really good time. So it's just a very memorable event. I have been working on developing bandana kits to go along with my new bandana pattern, Honey Road bandana. I'm working with All the Colors Yarn Co., which is Tammy out of Peoria, Illinois. And this kit, I didn't mention earlier, but this kit and also the pattern only takes 2 mini skeins of yarn for sock weight yarn. So it's really nice for any of you that have a few 20, 25 gram mini skeins laying around. So that is hopefully going to be a really nice way to introduce local people to maybe my designs or just kind of get them interested in yarn in the shop. It's kind of a bite-sized sample of what we are offering in the shop other than tattoos, I suppose. And we are also carrying plushie yarn in the shop now. There are a lot of crocheters in my area, and there isn't a huge selection of plushie yarn at Walmart or Hobby Lobby that I have noticed. And what is available is really, really thick and kind of microfibery, and I cannot stand the feeling of microfiber. Neurodivergent people won't be surprised at all. And the plushie yarn that I use, I was able to actually get wholesale to share with the community. So it's really silky. I'm selling it for $4 a skein, which I think is competitively priced for the area. I'm not making a huge profit on it, but that's not really always the point for me. So I want it to also still be affordable and make people excited that we're carrying yarn, because a lot of it's just a community thing for me. I'm carrying Candy Lizard Pets, as I mentioned. Adam printed another yarn bowl. We have 2 yarn bowls that are like pastel rainbow. One's a cauldron and one's dragon scales. And then he also just printed a really dark gold and purple mix. It's really cool. It's hard to describe, but it sort of shifts in hue based on the way you're looking at it or the light. And that one is another cauldron. And he also made some new fidget pets, a couple fidget toys, and those will be available in the shop as of this week. I also hand stamped some wood embroidery bobbins for like cross stitch and stuff. So if people like those, I just had a few laying around from, again, past craft projects and thought that maybe it would be something unique. I'm hoping to carry some new project bags from the Cato Project bag pattern. And I would also, this is kind of in the future, but I would really like to carry cross stitch kits. I found some really cute ones on Fair, which is where I get a lot of our products from, other than the ones that I have individual accounts with yarn suppliers. And that's really all I have for Behind the Counter. It's been a weird week. Like I said, I've spent several days at home, and the kids have had some events and field trips as the school year draws to a close. I've been home to be available for that or go to. We actually have a concert tonight for Will's band. They get out of school the 21st, but they don't have a full week of school left in the year. They have either early outs or days off or both every week that remains. So with that being said, let's close out this episode with our oracle reading. We are going to finish this episode with an oracle reading. If oracle decks are not your thing, I completely understand, and please feel free to end the episode here, and I will catch you next time for more fiber and tattoo related content. I do not use oracle cards for divination. Rather, I use them as a tool for peace and reflection. These readings are not meant to serve as spiritual direction or a replacement for one's belief system. Rather, I simply intend them for intuitive thought and inspiration in this life. The deck we're using today is by an artist named Annie Steg Gerard. The title of this deck is called The Sacred Wood Oracle. It is a 44-card deck that comes in a beautiful gold leaf accented box and includes a guidebook written by Lauren Loggins and Annie Steg Gerard, which we will be reading from today. The illustrations are beautifully detailed, featuring a female central character surrounded by familiars, botanicals, or seascape scenes. You can find this deck and Annie's artwork on Etsy under Annie Illustrations or on her website, anniesteg.com. With this deck, I typically do a 1-card pull after I shuffle, either from the top or the bottom of the deck. So I'm going to shuffle and then I'll stop when it feels right. I'm going to draw from the bottom today. We got the crow. Adapt and transform. Let's find that in the guidebook. Okay. Adapt and transform. The crow serves as a symbolic harbinger of transformative energy. In order to transform, we need to be able to first adapt. By adapting, we accept the current events as they are, and we learn what next steps to take. Often referenced in literature, the sleek crow harkens elements of adaptability, transformation, cleverness, and teamwork. Many of us crave change, but struggle to act on these desires. This is frequently because we have not first adapted to our present circumstances. We also tend to hold unrealistic expectations and timelines. By embracing reality and being reasonable, we can truly transform. Well, for me personally, that was nice. I just love these so much. Hope that helped inspire you. I know that it helped me. Also, crows and blue jays, any corvids usually have significant meaning to me. So thank you so much for spending some time with me today for episode 2 of the Pokes and Pearls podcast. I am still working out the kinks and show notes, but for right now, you can find links to anything I talked about in the description of this episode. I will also be posting a slideshow to my Instagram at gothabilly.knits, where you can see the projects I've discussed. If you aren't already, please consider following the podcast and leaving a review or a comment. It gets word out there that the podcast exists and means so much to me. Again, thank you for joining me, and I will be back in 2 weeks with more fiber and tattoo content. Happy crafting! Bye!